Hello and welcome, everyone. This is from Compliance to Connection, ADA website accessibility for connected school communities. So, just to make sure you're all in the right room, this is us. This webinar is going to be sponsored by Edlio. Clearly, we got the memo because we put it on our t shirts today, just so you won't be able to forget. We're really excited to be here with you today. All right, so just a little bit about our sponsor today. That's us. We are Edlio. And it is our mission to help K-12 educators and educational leaders reach every family in their school or district community. We do this by building a unified platform for school to home communication where you can manage your website, mobile app, mass communications, and online payments from a single dashboard. But really, at the heart of it, our mission is to connect school and family, and to do that by the use of technology that makes your life a little bit easier, your job a little more efficient, and your connections that much stronger. My name is Jess Cook. I am a former teacher turned marketing girl extraordinaire. So I currently work at Edlio as the creative marketing manager, which essentially means that any of our projects involving words and pictures falls under my umbrella. I have a background as a writer and an English teacher, so I bring those two worlds together into this job, and I am able to create all of our marketing materials from our website to our brochures, and even event collateral and things like that. When I am not marketing educational technology, I am hanging out in my home in the Nashville, Tennessee area. I've got three kids and a menagerie of pets who take up a lot of my time. And then I probably watch a little too much Netflix and I read a lot of books. So I'm really excited to be here today and to be back hanging out with educators again. You can take the girl out of the English class, but you're going to have to pry her away from the educational socializing opportunities. So it's really great to be here. And I'm super excited to be spending this time with you and getting to talk to you about a topic that is near and dear to my heart.
And hi, my name is Roland Rios. Like Jess, I'm a former educator. I actually retired from the public school system after 30 years in public education. I started as a high school math teacher, went into administration as a high school assistant principal, then moved into the district that I retired from. I was the principal of a combined middle school, high school. All of this in San Antonio, Texas. After 7 years of being a campus principal, the geek in me came out and I became the technology director for the school district. I am a proud self proclaimed geek. I'm not a nerd. There is a fine line there. And I am a tech geek, but I think I'm not a nerd. Um, During my tenure in that arena, I also worked with our state organization, the Texas Computer Educators Association, and I retired in 2022 after 30 plus years, but I knew I couldn't sit around and do nothing. Plus, my wife wouldn't allow me to sit around and do nothing. And I really wanted to stay connected with educators, just like Jess pointed out. I think it's kind of in our blood, and we want to stay in that realm. So I wanted to stay connected via an ed tech company. And the list of people that I wanted to work with or work for got really narrow really quick. I wanted to work with someone that really believed in education, that was in things for the right reason. And Edlio was at the top of my list because the folks at Edlio really care about your mission, helping you make your communication easier so that you can do what you need to do, and that's teach the kids. Take all of that that communication confusion out of your way. So very happy to be here. I am the community relationships manager. As I said, home is San Antonio, Texas, but I'm actually in a hotel room right now in Orlando, Florida. I know we had a guest here, an attendee from Orlando, beautiful city. I'm having a great time here at a conference. And when I'm not doing all of that, I enjoy time with my family, doing community service through my church. And Jess, being the wordsmith that she was, says playing the guitar and ukulele, though he admits he's still working on his skills. When I wrote this up, I actually told her I enjoy playing the ukulele and guitar really, really badly. Uh, so I hack away at it. But again, just like Jess, I'm happy to be here to share our experiences with communication, and especially this particular little wedge of it in communicating with those that may have some disabilities or impairments in getting those messages and helping you make sure that you can reach all of your audience. So I'm going to turn this back to Jess. She'll start us off.
All righty. So we're here to talk to you specifically about what Edlio does for accessibility. But well, before that, we just want to make sure that you leave here with a solid foundation, understanding ADA compliance as it relates to your website material, your online communications, and making sure that you are equipped with all of the skills and knowledge that you need in order to be able to monitor those online materials and communications and keep your school or district within compliance. So I like to start with the why this matters. Um, and for me, the biggest deal is this is about people, and this is about reaching every single family in your school or district community, regardless of the barriers that those families may face when it comes to accessing your updates and your announcements and your information. Whether you have met them or not, if almost a third of Americans have a diagnosed disability and 1 in 18 has a visual disability, those people are in your community as well. Those are your family members. Those are your, parents, guardians, grandparents, etc. So absolutely, you have people in your community who need a little bit of extra support to reach your communications and to receive your updates and announcements. We're just doing a roll call here, but just to see who's in the audience and make sure that we understand who we are presenting to. Basically, just getting an idea of your role in your school or district. So whether you are the district level leadership of a superintendent or director, maybe you have a technology or a communications or PR role, a building level leadership, principal, dean, etc., or something else. We are all excited to have all of you, and really just want to make sure that we are covering all the bases for everybody in our audience. Back to the makeup of your community for your school or district and all of the parents and caregivers that you are trying to reach, engage, and invite to be active participants in their child's education. Chances are they have disabilities that you may not know anything about. And so even if you think this doesn't apply to you, statistically speaking, it absolutely does. But even more than that, really, these are families that deeply want to be involved. Every family, for the most part, really wants to be involved in their child's education. We had an opportunity to actually meet a couple of parents, Melissa Padron and James Chambers. They are two parents with visual disabilities, legal blindness, and other severe disabilities, and they gave us some really powerful insights about what that experience is like as a parent trying to stay connected to their children's school experience and their education. And so, these quotes came directly from them. Basically, as you can see here, their message is we want to be involved. We care deeply. We love our children and we want them to be successful. And we need just that extra layer of support from the school or district, making sure that the content they're putting out there is accessible so that we can receive those updates and get ourselves involved and engaged in the education of our child. So they are encouraging us to break down barriers and ensure accessibility, to give them the freedom and dignity to allow their children to thrive. And this is just such a powerful message. You may not know these two parents specifically, but I guarantee there are parents just like them in your school or district community. And it's just so important As a former educator, I know that every educator in this room cares deeply, not just about some students and their parents, but about every student and every parent, every guardian and caregiver, and that it is important to you to be inclusive of all of them and to reach all of them in your messaging.
Jess, if I could just jump in for just a second.
Sure.
I had the pleasure of meeting Melissa and James, and this is actually a couple. They are a married couple, both of them with visual impairments, and all three of their children have no visual impairments whatsoever. So there are times where you have students in your classroom where you can, I don't want to say make assumptions, but you may they may have a second language at home based on the way the kid is talking, or so you might be able to identify some of those distinguishing characteristics of your parents. If you met Melissa and James's kids, you would have no idea that both parents have visual impairments. So, as Jess pointed out, they are in your schools. You really need to pay attention to this. And the other thing that Melissa and James pointed out when we were talking to them is they really do want to be involved. Don't assume when you have parents like this that you know what their limitations are. She said, "Ask me for anything you need, and I will tell you whether I can do it or not." She said things like chaperoning. She can chaperone. She can collate papers. She has some visual acuity. She can cut out laminates. She can do all of that stuff. So let them tell you what they can and cannot do. Don't put limitations on these guys because they're wonderfully involved parents that want to advocate for their kids and help you in the classroom as well. Just had to add that in there, Jess.
Absolutely. So essentially, um, every last one of us has had some exposure to assistive technology. Personally, I am on team keep the captions on every time you watch TV, because even though I can hear it, I don't always understand every word, and I notice how much I miss when those captions are not on. I am also on team look at TikTok or YouTube videos with the captions on because I just don't like a lot of noise blasting out of my phone, especially if I'm in a crowded space or a place where that's just not appropriate. Like maybe I'm waiting in line at the post office or the doctor's office waiting room. I want captions on my video content so that I can be able to consume that content without sharing it with the entire room around me. There are also folks who prefer to read a transcript instead of listening to an audio podcast because maybe they just want to skim and find the most relevant information for them without having to listen to the full hour or 45 minutes. There are those of us, myself included, who are in the camp of like holding the phone up here and putting the glasses on the top of our head. And so I'm moving things closer to get a font to a readable size from my face and things like that. So assistive technology is sort of this category that we tend to apply to folks with a recognized disability. And certainly there are pieces of software and technology that aid and assist folks who have a disability, but other folks who just are in circumstantial situations also would benefit from this type of technology. So I'm just going to show you just briefly what this will look like. So this is our demo site that Roland and I get to play around with. And I want you to imagine for a moment that instead of seeing this site, you were listening to the site being narrated to you by a screen reader. A screen reader is just a general term for the software that people use if they have a visual disability and they have trouble visually seeing the content of your website. So they use a screen reader that reads that content to them out loud. So instead of them seeing this navigation menu at the top, they're going to hear academics, all about us, clubs and athletics. And then they're going to use arrow keys or spacebar on their keyboard to navigate up and down within that menu. If there's image content on your site, they're not going to see the image, they're going to hear the screen reader read them the alternative text that is coded in behind the image. So, for instance, if the image says something like image 47, they don't get any context for that. But if it says students in chemistry lab exploring an experiment together, well, that gives them color commentary about the culture and the offerings of your school community. So a lot of the assistive technology that folks are using, it's a very different experience for navigating the web than what you might typically think of for browsing the internet. And if we can just pull the slides back up, please. So essentially, this is what the screen reader sees when it is navigating your website. It doesn't see the front end, it reads the code on the back. And then it uses that code like a roadmap to tell it exactly what's happening on your website and exactly what it needs to narrate out loud for the person using the screen reader. And so it's a very different experience. And that's why it is so important to use the accessibility skills and tools that we're going to talk about today, because we want to make sure to make that site content accessible to this screen reader and to other types of assistive technology. And that means making sure that the code actually follows a logical order that can be accessed more easily from the screen reader technology. So a lot of this has to do with the actual design and layout of the page, and then it also has to do with the words and pictures that you have added to the page. And in general, this is what it looks like for that screen reader. So you kind of have to throw away some of your assumptions about what works and what doesn't, and just sort of trust the process and follow the rules for what the web accessibility guidelines really need to look like. So, there's the why this matters in terms of, well, because people deserve to be connected to your school community, because parents and guardians care about being connected to your school community, and because you care about reaching and including all of them. But there is also a flip side of that, which is that it is a legal requirement. So your website content falls under ADA Title II, the Americans with Disabilities Act. This is the federal ruling that requires all school communications and online content to follow ADA guidelines. This is already in place, but also the government has come around and said that as of April 2026, so just about 1 year from now, they're really going to start more strictly enforcing it across the board. And so that may feel like a long time from now, but we're going to go through a little preview of what it looks like to update your website content if you have not paid any attention thus far to the accessibility factor. And you are going to need every bit of that year to get your website in compliance. So that's why we're really trying to talk about this now, to make sure that school and district leaders are prepared to fully be in compliance and then maintain that compliance going forward as of this deadline. And this is linked, so I'm not going to click out from it now, but when you get to the slide deck after the presentation, you'll be able to read that law line by line and word for yourself. I am not an attorney and I cannot provide actual legal advice, but I am someone who has spent a lot of time studying this and paying attention to it so that I can help to guide educators through it. That is the law on the federal level. There are also several statewide laws that add an additional layer of requirement on top of this one. And every day it kind of feels like another state is adding their law into the mix. So you may not be in one of those states right now, but it may be coming down the line within the next year that your state decides to also enforce these guidelines. And then on the right-hand side of this slide, WCAG stands for Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. Essentially, this is your guidebook. This is the laundry list of things that your website needs to follow along with and that your website content needs to comply with in order to meet the requirements of the law. And again, that is hyperlinked for you, so I am not going to read you every single thing line by line, but we are going to cover some of the most common issues in this presentation so that you will be able to have a good idea of what it looks like to follow those guidelines. So
Jess,
failure to follow, yeah.
I'm sorry to
Go ahead.
interrupt, just but we had a great comment in the chat that those WCAG guidelines and Title II goes beyond the website. It also deals with all the apps and tools that the kids have access to during the school day, everything from Google Docs to whatever they're using. We need to make sure that all of the tools that we provide for our parents, online textbooks for the kids, all that stuff is within those guidelines as well. Today, we're going to focus, of course, specifically on a website and communication. But that is a great point that Ms. Fitzgibbons brought up for us. Thank you so much.
Yes, absolutely. Essentially, if you're linking to it from your website or your communications, wherever it leads also has to be accessible too. So yeah, that is absolutely part of it. And that is part of this process. So essentially, if your website is not in compliance with these guidelines, you could face a complaint from the Office of Civil Rights or the OCR or your state and local agencies as well. And I have had the opportunity to speak to a couple of educational leaders, some district leaders who have gone through or are currently in this process, and it is lengthy to say the least. So this just gives a brief overview of what they are going through. And no, I am not going to read every single item on this checklist, but you can see it's a lot. But essentially, you have an initial meeting to get the information that someone has spotted an error in accessibility on your website, your online communications. We've received a complaint and this is what it was. And then they will also kind of spot check your website at that point, and they will showcase that there are a variety of issues on other pages or posts or pieces of content. And then they turn it over to you. And it is your job to audit all of the content on your website. So I want you to take a minute and think about your school or district website. How many pages you think you have on that thing? How many news stories? How many calendar events? How many links? Every last one of them has to be audited and it has to be checked against those WCAG standards. And you really have to just review each one and make sure that nothing has crossed that line. And you basically have to come to them and you have to say, okay, we did the audit and we found X number of errors. And so we know now what the problem is and how big the scope is. And then you develop a plan to go through and systematically correct all of those errors, page by page, post by post, line by line. And once a month, you check in with your government representative and you show them the work that you have done to, make improvements in this area for your website. And typically speaking, this takes about a year to go through and have these monthly check-ins and show them everything you've done to fix all of the errors. And then at the end of it, you also have to present them with a plan for how you're going to prevent landing right back in this situation in the future. And I want to be very clear about these educators that I spoke with who have been in this situation. They care deeply about the families in their community. They are doing their absolute best every single day to serve their students, their teachers, and their families, exactly like I am going to assume every single educator in the room with us today. These are not people who just threw caution to the wind and decided to blatantly ignore rules that were laid out for them. These are people who had probably a lot of hands on their website, updating and adding new content on a daily basis, and things slipped through the cracks. Or maybe you didn't even know the parameters of what you were supposed to be following in the first place. These complaints that they receive can come from literally anywhere. So it could be something very legitimate, like there is a parent in your school or district community who's having trouble accessing your content using their assistive technology. But it could also be a stranger from the internet who decides to just do some trolling and find an issue and report you to the government, because some people call that a hobby. Okay, so this can come from literally anywhere. And one complaint just sort of opens those floodgates for you and makes it where suddenly you are in the deep end of this situation. And these educators have told me, it was tedious, it was time consuming, it was meticulous. And at this point, I feel like I'm probably going to have to hire additional staff going forward, because they want me to prove that this is never going to happen again. And I don't have the staff currently to provide that level of constant oversight every time new content is updated to my website. So it can be a very big deal. And of course, you could, I suppose, choose to ignore all of their directives and not show up for the meetings. But at that point, you would be facing fines and a lot of other options. So it is very, very costly if you get to that point, and it is costly in terms of how many hours of your staff's time is going to now be dedicated to this and taken away from any other thing that they might, have been working on before this. And in some cases, people have told us, there can even be a per page or per error fine. It can get very expensive very easily, especially if you have a larger website with a lot of content on it. So this is both financial and just logistically a nightmare for these schools and districts who are in this situation. So I am going to hand it over to Roland.
I'm glad you addressed the cost. There was a comment in there. Lots of time, lots of man hours, but also lots of money could be associated with these fines, and it's money that we're having to take out of one pocket to put to pay for something else, and that comes out of instructional funds or extracurricular activities, and we don't want to do that to the kids. But there is hope. There are ways to make sure to help ensure that you don't fall into these problems with litigation or not being compliant. The very first thing that I think that we need to bring up is it all starts with the basic structure of your website. Now, every school out there has a website. You may be using a free solution. There's lots of free solutions out there. You might be using a third party that you found on the internet to build this website because you need a public facing entity. As people are moving into your community, they want to see your school, they want to learn about your school. So everyone goes out and builds a website. But let's face it, unless we came from the private sector somewhere over, most of us went into education for education. We want to teach. We did not go into education because we like to design websites or we know anything about HTML coding and that sort of thing. So my point is it starts from the very basics. It starts from the foundation of your website. So as you're looking for a solution, who are we going to get to host this website? What platform are we going to build this on? Make sure that you start with a strong foundation. The analogy I like to use is you can build a beautiful house, but if you don't have a firm foundation for that house, sooner or later you're going to start to see those cracks in the wall. Doors are going to start sticking. They're going to start jamming. I'm blessed. I live in southern Texas. We live on rock. My foundation's not going anywhere. So it's horrible whenever I try to plant flowers, but I've got a strong foundation, and so the house is solid. When you decide to build a new website, maybe you're moving to a new service, or maybe you want some upgrades, you need to ask those questions of those web hosting providers. Things like, is your navigation bar, is it ADA compliant? Just showed you how on the menu at the top you need to be able to tab between them, because there may be people. We're talking a lot about visual impairment, but there are also people with mobility impairment that can't work the mouse, could have some trouble working the mouse, and so they use the keyboard and they tab and they arrow over and that sort of thing. And if they're using a screen reader, it's going to read those headers to them. Does the basic structure of your website allow for that? Because that's not normally something that a web provider that you would be doing, updating the website. If you're using a service like Edlio or someone similar, or even a Google site, you're typing in the content. You're not getting into all that structure and all that little garbly gook HTML that Jess was showing you earlier. So make sure that you ask these kinds of questions. Ask these providers, what safeguards do you have for that ADA compliance? Another example, if I upload a video into my website, does it add the auto captioning for me? Or am I going to have to go find a third party piece of software where I upload the video, manually type in all of the captioning, and then upload it to the website? That's a little bit, more tedious. So if you can find someone that has that in the foundation of the website hosting service, that's going to do you a whole lot of good. Another example, just talked about having alt text. So when a screen reader gets to a picture, it can read out the description. Are there safeguards so that when people post a picture on the website, it either prompts them to put in that alt text, maybe a big warning comes up, hey, you've just put a picture and you haven't put in any alt text. You better do that to be in compliance. Or maybe it doesn't even allow the picture to show up if it doesn't have alt text. Those are the kinds of safeguards that you want to be looking for so that you start off with a very strong foundation for that website so that when you launch, you're like, okay, we're in good shape, we're off and running, and we're in a pretty good spot. But what happens is As your website content increases, so do the opportunities for accessibility errors. Like Jess said, websites, you're going to have, you could hundreds, thousands of pages. You start off with your main page and you have, your main content. And then all of a sudden, oh, we need a page for our gifted and talented program. We need a page for the choir. The band director wants a page. Our football coach, he needs to be able to post his practices. And this is great information to have for your families. We want to keep them connected. We want to keep them informed, and we want to make sure they're a part of our community, but you're starting to put more and more and more and more information. What are the safeguards for those people as they continue to add to the website, that those errors don't come up? And that's where we tend to see some of those little dings, those ADA compliance dings pop up, is when they start to add content. And I want to show you some examples. You're like, what kind of content or errors are you talking about, Roland? Well, let's take a look at what you might see. So here's a sample web page on our internal web page on our demo site, and some of it you may not, it may not be as obvious. For example, and I know this is kind of tiny, it's hard to see, but you've got a headline here, and then you've got like a subheader here. There's a subheader here. There's a subheader here. There's stuff hidden in there. You could have an error called hierarchy, header hierarchy. So when a screen reader is reading it, it will read headline 1 level, headline 2 level, headline 3 level, and that helps those people with visual impairments know, okay, this is kind of like a subheading, this is a subheading. Well, if I start with a subheading level 2 and I never got a sublevel heading 1, I may begin to wonder, if I don't have that visual acuity, did I miss something? Am I reading this out of order? So you need to make sure that that hierarchy is there. Another warning you may get is contrast warning. Some people may have limited visual acuity, and if the color contrast is not right, and there's some WCAG guidelines that are very specific, what colors stand out, what colors don't stand out. People with color blindness may not be able to see certain colors contrasted against another. They may not see anything at all. A screen reader might be able to read this perfectly. So for those that are completely visually impaired and use a screen reader, might not be an issue. For those with some minor visual acuity impairments, such as, like I said, color blindness, they may not be able to see that text at all. So you have to be very careful. And I know we want our websites to look colorful and attractive, and sometimes, especially, I'm not pointing fingers, the teachers want their websites to look cutesy, especially elementary level. They want the cute little pictures and all these different colored fonts. Some of those fonts are not easy to read. Some of the colors are not easy to read. So be very careful. And again, this is stuff that, you may be the webmaster for your entire district. You've got teachers and band directors and everybody at all these campuses adding all this content. And this is where a lot of these little errors can come up. There's another error here. This is a list of accomplishments. It's, again, kind of hard to see. I'm going to show it to you again in just a little bit on a bigger screen, but it's really, it should be a bulleted list that would read much, much easier with proper structure. And the screen readers can read that as well. There is a link here that just says click, I think. Okay. That link is not descriptive. I am very guilty of doing this. And I was, when I was the tech director and posting stuff on our website, I would say, for more information, click here, HERE, and that was the link. That was the only word that was highlighted. Well, when a screen reader reads that, it's going to say, hyperlink to here. That doesn't make sense to the person reading it. So instead of saying, for more information, click here, it should be an entire sentence or a button that says, click here for more information about the bus schedule. And that entire sentence should be a link, because it is much more descriptive where that link is taking you to, if that makes sense. Okay. So be very careful about the links. They should be descriptive. Um, I don't show this example on here. It might show up later. Some people like to underline words to emphasize part of a sentence. Okay. People can get very confused, because usually when we see underlined words on a website, we think that's a link. So words should not be underlined on a website unless it is actually a link. I learned that as we were prepping for this presentation. Um, some other things. things on here. Here's some alt text. We've got alt text on these images, but one of them might be too short. It might just say image or pic. Okay, some people get a little lazy and do something like that. Or the alt text is not descriptive. It may just say students. Okay, instead of saying a group of students in a hallway doing X, Y, or Z. So here's the example. If I'm clicking up on this academics, I am now arrowing up and down. I'm not using my mouse. I am using my arrow buttons. That's an example of a website that is compatible with people that might have some mobility impairment. They can move up and down, they can go slowly, their screen reader's going to read this. They could use tabs as well. I'm using the tab button now. So there's a fine example of how someone might get through a website navigation menu without having to use the mouse. Now, let me go show you this sample story that I just showed you here live. So now we can see it a little bit better. I'm going to zoom in just so we can see this. Okay. You'll notice the hierarchy. This text here looks like a headline, but this text is a little bit bigger headline. I believe this is formatted as like a header 2. This is formatted as a header 1. The screen reader is going to get very confused, thinking this stuff is out of order. Okay. So just make sure that you're using proper hierarchy. Here's underlined text, what I was talking about earlier. Edlio College Prep did amazing on getting their best scores ever. Underline, yeah, we're excited about it. But people are going to get confused trying to click on that, thinking something's wrong. They think it's a link. It is not. Okay. Here's that text. I can barely see this. We're now one of the top schools in the area. Maybe that's our school colors and we love gold, but that's not a very good color to use. People are not going to be able to read that. This one here just says click. Okay. Have no idea where this is going. It just says click. And then I can't see the alt text on here. A screen reader would be able to read that alt text and this alt text here. And again, in this example, the alt text is not sufficient enough. And Jess is actually going to demo how there's a product that could fix that for you. This is what on our Edlio, just so you can see, everyone has a different kind of content management system. This is what this story looks like inside our content management system. So this is how you might be able to fix some of these things. Okay. So this is what it looks like before it gets actually posted. Here's like this alt text. It says that one is very descriptive, but I believe this other one just says image. Okay. That is not sufficient. Okay. We can't let people get lazy and not put in proper alt text. One of the things that we have done for you to help you is we have created a checklist for you. This is just kind of a self-assessment. It is just we're going to have a link to this slide deck, and in this slide deck, there's going to be a link to this preview checklist. You can print it out, divvy up the work, examine, do your own kind of self-check over your website. It's going to have you looking at things like, whoops, yeah, alt text. Do you have alt text for images? Is it missing any alt text? Is it too short? Is it too long? Is it not descriptive enough? We're going to talk about color contrast. We're going to talk about link text. And this is a couple of pages of a self-assessment just to give yourself a little grade. How are we doing? Um, are we having a lot of trouble? Is there things that we could be on the lookout for? But it's just a handy little self-check that just put together for you. I would do this in a heartbeat. Again, it's good for you. You're covering yourself, but more importantly, you're making sure that you're taking care of your parents and your community. Now I want to go back one more time to my screen because there are some other online tools you can use. There is a plugin called Wave, which will allow you to do a really quick check of pages within your website and it will give you some error reporting. I'm going to show that to you live in just a second. The other thing that can lead to trouble, and I didn't cover this as I was showing you common errors, when you upload PDFs, your PDFs have to be ADA compliant as well. Okay. Most website content management systems that you're using are just going to take the PDF as is and put it on the website. Okay. So before that PDF gets uploaded to the website, you really should use like Adobe Acrobat Pro Someone in your district probably has a license for this, and Adobe Acrobat Pro will look at that PDF for you and make any corrections that need to be made. If there's images, it will add alt text into the PDF. To me, it's a better general rule of thumb is if you're putting information on the website, grab the information from the PDF and actually put it on a page in the website. Okay, so that the person can read it, the screen reader's going to read it a whole lot easier than if you're messing with PDFs, because PDFs can kind of have hidden errors in it that you're not going to be able to see. And I just Googled Wave Chrome plugin. It sits right up here. It's got like a little W. When I click that button, it very quickly runs a report and it gives this to me over here. I'm happy to say there are no errors on this demo site. We have 0 errors, 0 contrast errors, but we do have 10 alerts. These are things, if they show up in red on Wave, you better fix them right away. Okay. If they show up in yellow, this is, hey, here's some things you might want to consider to make your website even more accessible. And if I go into the details, I'll be able to see there's some redundant links, and I click on it and it takes me over here. Um, I found out why these are called redundant links. On this demo site, we wanted to show that we can put links at the bottom of our website. All of these links point to the same web page. They all point to edlio.com. This is just a demo site, but that's why it's saying you've got 3 links all going to the same place. This normally wouldn't happen. Okay. When you see these features, this is actually good stuff. Structural elements, this is telling you, hey, you've got some good things going on in here. You've got alternative text in 41 different places. You have some linked images with alternative text. So green means keep it up. You're doing a good job. Some of these other things, like this ARIA, that just has to do with hidden text that is helping screen readers navigate your thing properly. So most of these down here, that's good stuff. If you're seeing the red and yellow, this is things you might want to pay attention to. Now, this is a free tool. It's a great tool. It points out where your errors are, but it doesn't really give you a whole lot of any more help in how do you fix them. Okay, you're going to have to go back into your content management system and fix them yourself. But I just want to let you know about those 2 free, that one free tool, Wave, and encourage you to also use Adobe Acrobat Pro to make sure your PDFs are all up to par. And Jess, I'll give it back to you.
All right. All right, hit us with them, okay? It's time for you to test our knowledge and skill. To give us your questions, I'm going to be reading from those, but also I just want to, preface this. So Roland and I have spent a lot of time on this topic and playing around with the tools that are available. But if there just happens to be a question that goes beyond the scope of our technical expertise or legal expertise, then I promise to find an expert who can answer those questions, and we'll get back to you in the follow-up of the entire presentation. Sorry, with the follow-up email after the presentation.
Real quick,
Yeah,
just
so we
not a question, but a comment from Ms. Fitzgibbons again. Built-in accessibility checkers can typically find about 30% of errors. There may be still need manual checks, but I love this idea. Get feedback from your end users. If you know of people that have any kind of ADA um, uh, issues, get their feedback. Ask them, how's our website? Are you having any issues? Are there particular parts that we need to pay attention to? That is a great suggestion.
Absolutely. So we have a question about EAA compliance. So EAA in this case is the European Accessibility Act, and I have to admit, as an educator who spent all of my time in the classroom on American soil, I am not as knowledgeable about the European laws and regulations. It does apply to businesses in the EU. So if you are operating your school in the EU, some of these legal requirements are going to be different. And I think, obviously, again, with me not being a practicing attorney, I have a degree in literature, so nobody wants me in the courtroom representing them. But I will say, I can't give you explicit legal advice on that issue. But all of the parts that we talked about at the beginning about just wanting to make sure that you are following the best practices possible to reach all of the families in your school and district are universally applicable regardless of where you are doing business. But absolutely, I will admit EAA compliance is not as much in my wheelhouse as ADA compliance, simply because typically speaking, all of my experience here comes from, following American laws and regulations. But
Another
certainly that would
question.
be a question for your web design company. So, like Roland talked about earlier, if you are working with a partner to design and host your website and you are located in the EU, then you want to make sure that that web designer is fully knowledgeable about those laws and regulations as well and is following those in structuring the design and code of your website.
Just we had a great question from Miss Baird. What are the requirements for checking past social media posts in your website media feed? A lot of websites will pull Facebook, Twitter feeds and post them somewhere on their website. What are those requirements to making sure those posts, social media posts that are being pulled in from previous times, what is the requirements on those?
To be honest, I think, that all kind of goes along the lines of if it's an image or something like that, you may run into those alt text issues there. Obviously, Facebook, when you're posting directly to Facebook, it doesn't have as many of those built in tools. My recommendation for kind of covering all your bases on that front would be to use your website CMS platform as your home base of all your communication operations. So if you start on your website and you post your news story, similar to the one that Roland was showing in the presentation earlier, then typically speaking, a lot of platforms are going to have the step after publishing the news story is going to say, hey, do you want to share this in some other places? That's something that, for instance, our Edlio customers can do. So then when you share to Facebook, what you're sending to Facebook is content that you have built within the guidelines of that compliance on your own website. And so at that point, anything that links back, etc., it's coming right back to that compliant content space. So that would be my recommendation is that if you're going to do social media integrations on your website, that you use your website platform as the home base for posting those announcements on social media also. We have a question about will the checklist be in the resources on EdWeb? So yes, it will be. And I'm actually going to show a screen here at the end, but we've also built a landing page on Edlio. It's just edlio.com/edweb. There's no gatekeeping or anything there. You can just click right into that at any time and you can get the checklist and the slide deck from today's presentation, as well as some other resources that we've put together for you. So that's free and available at any point right from our website as well. And
We
then
got
we
some
have,
help from Miss Fitzgibbons on the social media post. It's basically the long and short of it is it is not retroactive. So previous posts do not fall under the same stringent guidelines. It's going to be pretty much from this day forward. Excuse me. So they do not have to meet the new WCAG 2.1 level AA.
alrighty. So we have some questions about the ADA compliance and how it goes with learning management system or LMS tools. So, for instance, if you're using Google Classroom, if you're using Blackboard or some other platform like that, it does get very tricky, right? But the thing about it is that the families need access to all of that material as well. If they're going to help their child complete their homework, they have to be able to access everything that goes into those platforms. And so that is a question that unfortunately this rabbit hole takes you down, where when you are choosing an LMS, when you are choosing curriculum providers, when I was an English teacher, we had the online version of our textbook that had all these supplemental materials in it, and the students were accessing it straight from Google Classroom and going into those materials. And all of that would have to fall under the umbrella of ADA compliance as well. And granted, I do not work for any of the LMS companies, but I will tell you they also are aware of these laws. I am certain of it because they serve educators as well. So most of them are probably aware of that and taking steps to make their content compliant and accessible if it is not already. And that kind of goes along with things like Google Docs and other resources along those lines. If you're going to be partnering with anybody else or using those kind of resources, then you're going to have to do your due diligence in checking with the representative that you are paying for those services and make sure that they know what the legal requirements are and that they understand what needs to happen in order to keep you in compliance with all of those materials as well. And then we also have a question about, does all of this apply to private schools and religious schools? Depends on what you mean by all of this. As it stands right now, a lot of the ADA compliance requirements apply specifically to schools that receive federal funding. So right now, I don't know whether every private school and religious school in the country receives any type of federal funding or does not. I also don't know how vouchers maybe change that game a little bit and may put you under that umbrella. But 100%, I can say that the first part of this presentation applies to those schools in that you care deeply about reaching every family in your school community as well, and that it is part of your mission to include all of those family members. And so certainly in that sense, it applies in that if you follow these guidelines, you will make your content more accessible to every person that you are trying to reach. You may or may not have to worry about the OCR violation side of things, but certainly if you are worried about building a community of every family that you serve, then you would still be in your best interest to follow these guidelines for sure. Just briefly, we want to show you, what Edlio is doing, why we've come here today to show you what we're doing about this. This is a picture of Ali Arsan, our founder and CEO. And this man is on a mission and has been for over 20 years to make the work of educators easier and more efficient and more effective. And, as someone who has partnered with educators for 20 years, he realized this process that we've been describing with Roland showing you that wave tool, it is a great free resource, but you have to publish the content, open the third-party tool, scan everything, take note, and then probably have a second tab open with the back end of your content management system and error by error go through and line things up and fix them. And, Ali said, it can't happen this way. It does not have to be that manual. We have technology. We can do this more effectively and more efficiently. So we give you the transparency of reporting and the ability to fix that with the click of a button. So a lot of these errors that you saw before, we have a built-in tool for our content management system that is powered by AI that finds those errors for you and then allows you to fix them so that they come right back into compliance with the current standards according to WCAG. This is the story that Roland was showing before on the front end. And this is what we look like on the back end. If you can see, this is my demo site, and I have my list of news stories here, and my accessibility tool has already flagged this one as being problematic. And then when I click into the actual news story to see what it looks like on the back end, you can see all of those problems that are there. And then down here in the corner, there is an accessibility report option. So I'm going to click that. And the beauty of this tool is it will run before you publish this content. So you draft the content, you run the tools, and it says, whoa, you've got some issues. This toolbar that pops up on the right-hand side showcases these issues. Roland's already gone over them, but you can just see that it caught the problems that he was describing in his part of the presentation. So it's kind of like a learning tool as you use it, because you'll see these errors. And if you see contrast warning every time you start a news story, you probably need to pay a little more attention to the font colors that you're trying to add to your pages. If you see underlined text, that's your reminder, oh, right, I'm not supposed to do that. So you kind of educate yourself about these guidelines as you are using the tool. But then the best part is, now that it has scanned the content for errors, it also fixes them for you. Okay, so I wish it was a little bit more magical, like it just has a whole little star sparkle going across the screen, but essentially what we've done here is fix these errors. So you can see in the purple box what it has fixed. You can see just visually that it has fixed this so that both of these are header 2 rather than being out of order. This neon yellow text has gotten to a darker color that's still in that same color family. So if you really love that color family, it hasn't taken it away completely, but it's made it something that falls within line of color contrast. This link that just said click before now says visit Edlio's website because that's where the link is taking you. And then the image that was having issues with alt text before, now actually the AI has scanned that image and it has created alt text that is more descriptive. And if you wanted to, you could go in and edit that alt text too. So maybe you want to name the students by name or something, or the name of the school that they're in, that kind of thing. You can add that to it. So now you
Yeah.
can see that it has, sorry, go ahead.
Now, there was a question, just about the turnaround on that reporting. Is it immediately upon running the report? Yes, you click, it'll tell you your errors. You can fix them individually or just hit that fix with AI, and it just takes a few seconds. If there's a lot of pictures and it's having to look at the pictures to generate alt text, it might take a little bit longer, but it fixes it all for you, and then you can publish. And the nice thing about this tool, unlike Wave, as Jess pointed out earlier, where you have to publish it live, check it, and then go fix it, this catches all these mistakes before you ever publish live.
Absolutely. So now when I publish this story, all of those issues have been fixed. And when we go back to my news and alerts, you can see that it no longer has that orange flag on it to showcase the issue. So that's the other thing. As soon as we build this tool into your website, it will show you immediately if you have content in there that is being flagged for errors. And it really shortens that work for you from some of these other tools where you would have to manually go through and check all of your content individually that way. So it gives you that report that showcases exactly what the errors were and where they are so that you can click in and find and fix them with just one button instead of doing all of them at once. All righty. So again, edlio.com/edweb, that's where you will find the slide deck from this presentation, the ADA checklist that's available for download, as well as some resources and a little bit more information about the tool that I just briefly demoed. If you would like a personalized tour of that tool, absolutely, we will get that for you. And in fact, if we could run the polls, if you would personally like to learn more about Edlio accessibility and that tool I just demoed, if the 2 minutes that I previewed it wasn't quite enough for you, we will be happy to follow up and get you a one-on-one conversation about that and more information if you would like it. And you can also find that information, even if you're choosing no, you can self-explore edlio.com and see on that resource page all of the information there as well. And then there's one more poll. If you would like a personalized demo of anything that you saw in the Edlio platform today, could be the accessibility tool or just the CMS itself, the full suite of the ADA compliant tools that we offer for school to home communication, you just let us know, and I will make sure that you get a personalized follow-up after this meeting so that someone will reach out and schedule that at a time that's convenient for you. We really appreciate that you came out. If you ever need anything, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. You can find our LinkedIn on this slide or Roland, his Twitter/X. You can reach us via email easily enough, and we are always available to answer any questions you might have.
It's been an absolute pleasure, and we wish you the best of luck in the remainder of the school year. Keep up the great work.
Absolutely.